Hi guys. Okay, part 2 of your balloon pump, explaining a little bit about augmentation. So we'll talk about augmented blood pressure and your assisted systolic and assisted diastolic. So just a little bit of terminology. This is going to be your first blood pressure right here. That is your own intrinsic blood pressure without any help from the balloon pump. Over here is where your balloon pump inflates. So explaining that again, this is the art line at the very end of your balloon pump. So you actually have two art lines, one at the balloon pump and possibly one at your wrist or brachial. Anyway, this is your intrinsic blood pressure, your heart working on its own. And you have your dichroic notch here. And then this is your diastole. I know it's a little pronounced here, but I just wanted to show it to you so that you could you can see when the balloon pump inflates. So on the second beat, your balloon pump inflates. So this is your intrinsic systolic blood pressure. Your balloon pump hasn't worked yet. This is your dichroic notch. So your aortic valve shuts and you go into diastole. And as you go into diastole, after systole, you go into diastole, your balloon pump inflates and that increases your blood pressure. And so that's your first augmented blood pressure. So what happens then is that passive, remember in part 1, I explained that your balloon pump actively deflates. And so when it actively deflates, it empties out some space in the aorta and the pressure drops below baseline. So here is your first assisted diastolic blood pressure. Assisted diastolic, that's supposed to be a D, sorry. So your augmented blood pressure, your asystic diastolic blood pressure is below your original diastolic blood pressure. And then this is pretty key also, because the balloon deflated and you had this empty space, your heart doesn't have to work as hard anymore. Remember, your balloon pump rests your heart. And because your heart doesn't have to work as hard anymore, your assisted, right here, your assisted systolic blood pressure, assisted systolic blood pressure is lower than your intrinsic one. So a lot of people are concerned because the balloon pump will drop your blood pressure, but that's the whole point of the balloon pump. When you turn it on, it'll drop your blood pressure because it lessens the workload of the heart. So you decrease your SVR here at the assisted diastolic blood pressure, and then you decrease the workload of the heart with your assisted systolic blood pressure. You'll notice that after the second balloon pump inflation, it first inflated here. After the second balloon pump inflation, your augmented blood pressure is no longer as high as your first one. So your first one's higher, your second, third, subsequent, this is on a 1-to-1, and later on I'll introduce, or if you want, you can question me, I didn't want to complicate this presentation too much, but when you're in a 1-to-2 or 1-to-4, your augmentation pressures change. All right, so anyway, come seek any of your preceptors, any of your CCU nurses also that have the balloon pump therapy down. But again, this is balloon pump basics. This is augmentation, assisted diastolic blood pressure, assisted systolic blood pressure, and why they change. Cheers.